Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on your time. Welcome in. We're going to get started here momentarily. We got a few more people coming in the door here right at uh, right at the top of the hour, but we're excited to get started here. Uh, in the interest of time, we've got a lot of content to go through, so I'm going to make sure we kick it off right away. We're going to be talking about business premium and how to secure your Microsoft 365 tenants. And today we have Steve, one of our Microsoft certified training partners here, that's going to be taking us through a lot of great content. It's going to be uh, not just death by PowerPoint, we're going to be going through a lot of the content, demos and click throughs. We're looking for you to ask your questions, put them in the chat, in the Q&A. I'll call them out or try to answer them the best I can. We'll make sure that Steve's aware. We don't want you to hold on to them to the end because we know this is a long training session and you might forget them. So ask them right away. But that said, we will reserve 20 or so minutes at the end for Q&A. If you've got something that you want to go back and revisit or ask us about, feel free to do so then. We're excited to get started here. So, Steve, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
Nah, now I'm not. Okay. Yeah, I got kicked out of the meeting literally a minute before it started, so I had to come back in. So, glad I made it back. I hope everyone can hear me. If everyone would, if you would look in the Teams window where you see me and myself and Mike, if everyone would give me a thumbs up using the react button, it's next to the raise your hand button. Just give me a thumbs up. I'll consider a hand raised and been put back down a high five, so that's acceptable as well. You'll notice we have both the chat and the Q&A. I think chat is enabled for everyone, so if you would do me a favor and tell me where you're joining from, just so I can see everyone in the chat. If you do that for me. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Um, very good. Very good. Looks like we have folks from all over. So great to have you. Bonjour to my friends in Montreal. That's the entire extent of my French section. French. So thank you for being here. Okay, it looks like many of us, we have quite a few from Canada, but many of us are from uh, the States and also from Earth. Giovanni, thank you for that. Love the detailed description there. So, a couple things I want to say. First of all, feel free to ask questions in the chat. We know the chat works, you know how to use it, you've proven it. If you have something super timely that you think everyone on the call would benefit from hearing, go ahead and raise your hand or ask the question, uh, and Mike will catch that. We also, just so you know, Mark McClure from on our team is here, and he is one of Microsoft's most active trainers on some of the security topics we're going to be talking about today. So besides Mike's expertise, we also have Mark who will be helping watch the Q&A or watch Q&A in chat and adding color commentary as needed. Um, so our focus of this session is really focusing not so much, I think we're so used to hearing about Copilot, that it's not so much just on Copilot, but it's on the entire Microsoft 365 realm and primarily on business premium. So, what we're going to be focusing on today is most of the capabilities, including some new add ons we can add to business premium to bring bring E5 level compliance and security to the business premium world. So we're going to start off with sort of an overview, some promotions, some programs, sort of what's the difference, what's all this stuff happening with chat. We'll cover some of that stuff, high level stuff, and then we're going to actually dig into each and every, well, not every, but many of the capabilities that is brought to us through Business Premium. Things like sensitivity labels, DLP, audit, um, Defender, endpoint. So we'll be looking at all those. And my goal today is to give each of you some ideas of some things you, if you're not already doing, and when we look at the back end data of Business Premium users and tenants, we know that most partners don't turn a lot of this stuff on. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some great ideas on things we can do. We'll also give you some resources where there's checklists and stuff you can use. And last but not least, like I said, we've got some good time here together. Don't hesitate to ask questions. More than likely, if you have a question, somebody else probably is thinking it too. So let's go ahead and hop in and get started. So first thing I want to share is some cool programs that are running. We're going to talk quite a bit. The very first column or the very first choice in the upper left, we have the ability to add the E5 security capabilities as well as some compliance, like I said. So we'll talk about that today. If you're selling E3 and E5, and pretty much every security tool we're going to look at, every security capability is also available in E3 and E5. So that goes across the board. So encourage you to look at that. Down at the bottom, you'll see we now have, depending on what level of participation you participate in the MAICPP program, MAICPP program, formerly MPN, depending on what level of benefits you sign up for or subscribe to and which specializations you have, that determines whether you get some copilot licenses or not. We just looked in ours, and because of how we're participating, we had 2 licenses of the $30 full Microsoft 365 Copilot. Latest news just came out about a week or a little over a week ago was the 15% M365 Copilot promotion is extended now from 10 seats to 2,400 seats. Used to be limited at 300, was really focused on small business. Now they're moving it up to small and medium. So anyway, you'll have all of these slides, like we said, and the recording. Make sure you have access to all these. Make sure you're working with your Sherweb team to take advantage of all of these programs. So, like I said, we're going to focus primarily on Microsoft 365, but 9 out of 10 in partners I'm working with that I'm talking to their customers, 9 out of 10 are absolutely thinking about AI. And so the genesis of this content really started with, okay, how do we prepare? What are even if our customer's not ready to buy that $30 license, what can we start doing today to as a, I hope for everyone on this call, as a project for your customers, a billable project, how can we get them ready for Copilot? And here you'll see 3 different areas of things to focus on. And I'm going to tell you my 3 favorites. First and foremost is conditional access. If you have business premium customers that you have not turned on conditional access, please do that right away. We have firsthand accounts of issues where if conditional access were set up and fully configured, it would have helped address. Second one on the sensitive data side, DLP. We're going to spend some time. I'm going to walk you through creating a DLP policy. Highly encourage, if you're not doing this already, to do that. And then, last but not least, we're going to look at the Copilot dashboard. And I think we've done Lighthouse before with this group, but we're going to go and look at the in tenant side of the dashboard and see what kind of data we can see in there as far as usage in our environment. So, if you traditionally sell business basic or business standard, the five things you'll see on the left, and we'll be talking about almost all of these today, are things we absolutely have to make sure are turned on. These are all things that make the Copilot experience more secure. Um, Now, if you're considering your business basic and standard customers, upselling them to business premium, you can use this list on the right and talk them through the capabilities it brings, right? So going from MFA to MFA with conditional access, bringing in basic e-discovery and litigation hold into our environments, and all those everything you'll see listed here. Like I said, in the resources, we'll give you even more detailed step by steps of what we're doing here. Um, if business premium doesn't have enough security capabilities, which for most small businesses, most 300 seats and below, we find business premium, if you turn on the capabilities that are built into the box, um, you'll it's great for most small businesses. But I know many of you still have small businesses that are on business premium, or maybe that have advanced security, cybersecurity needs that need E5. And I know some partners that will sell a customer with 40 seats E5 licenses. Um, so what Microsoft did is saw that behavior and said, "Oh, hold it, maybe that's not the best." So they created the E5 security add-on for for business premium. And yes, it's the same M365 E5 security that we sell with E3, but now we can add it to business premium. Same price point, $12. And what that does is that brings us, and I'm sorry if you're on a smaller screen, sorry for the eye chart, but you would, like I said, you will be getting this. It brings us that full set of identity and access, full identity secure protection, device security, more robust email and app security, and then one of the areas I'm finding really interesting right now is around cloud apps, and how we can be a little bit more sophisticated without doing a lot of work of maybe keeping some of that shadow AI, some of those tools we're not really sure what they do with the data. Now gives us the ability to do that. Like I said, the add-on is $12. It's if we were adding on all the pieces, and you'll see those over here on the left. If you add on all the pieces independently, it's about $28. So it's a pretty darn good savings to get all of the security tools. Several partners, like I said, I've had time to talk about, have really gotten excited about this because it does allow them to bring true enterprise level security, the same level that the Fortune 500 are using today, that the government is using today, or that governments, I should say, are using today. Bring those same capabilities into that small and medium sized business. So, last thing on this, the E5 security, here's a list of everything that's included. Included some things that you can't buy individually. Um, so, like I said, a good list. Anyone that has a security practice, and maybe you've been supplementing some security with third-party tools, maybe this is a good way to bring everything, simplify, bring everything under that Defender umbrella. So excited about that. And this is the security side. What about the compliance side? The other thing that Microsoft has done is they've made available to us three add-ons to Business Premium that are components that come from E5 compliance, the E5 compliance add-on for E3, but they're broken down into different things. My favorite, of course, is the very first one. It's the information protection and governance add-on. It's $7, and it brings that full Defender to cloud. Oh, and a great one, Ari. Thank you. All pricing. I'm sorry to all of my wonderful friends to the north. All pricing and all Microsoft documentation I've seen recently is all US. So my apologies for that. But $7 US gives us that full cloud app security, gives us increased DLP. So inside of Teams chat, for example, if we need to be cautious of sharing national ID numbers, driver's license details, banking information, we get more control over that with DLP. We'll talk about that a little later. We also get endpoint DLP, which will actually help protect device sensitive data that may be stored on the Windows or Mac devices. Automatic labeling, we're going to talk about automatic machine learning labeling when we get to that part, and some better message encryption and records management. Insider risk, we're typically seeing where we think in industries where there's a high risk of data exfiltration or people sharing externally sensitive data. Publicly traded companies, companies in finance, healthcare, R&D, any of those may consider insider risk a valuable add-on. And this gives us the ability to watch what's said and monitor for things that are communicated, however they're communicated with Microsoft 365, make sure they're following our guidelines and policies, codes of conduct. And last but not least, if you've got any customers that are in highly litigious industries, a good friend of mine's in the trucking industry, and he contends that they keep three different law firms fully employed. If you have customers in a highly litigious industry, e-discovery and audit gives us the premium capabilities of e-discovery and audit, which like case management, assigning case, how we assign roles and broader roles, how we communicate with the people that have data that is part of a litigation case, how we communicate with them. Lots of good power in there. And if you know what I'm talking about when I say e-discovery and litigation hold, you probably have clients in that space. So what I want to do is I want to hop right in and talk about what are the capabilities in Microsoft 365 Business Premium and available in E3 and E5 to get things what I call AI ready. And it starts with identity, right? We used to talk about where is the edge? And if you're old and mostly gray, where's my gray spot? Mostly gray like me, you remember that the edge was the firewall back in the day, right? It was that Cisco Pix or Checkpoint or whatever firewall you used, it was that firewall. Now we have the fact that the edge is everywhere in the world, right? It can be in my office, it can be at home, it could be in a hotel on holiday or on business travel, It could be in a Starbucks, Tim Hortons. Um, it could be, who knows where the edge is anymore. It's our identity and our device. So, like I said, we want to make sure we're turning on conditional access because that gives us machine based learning constantly running and watching the behavior of every login and every access we do. What does that really mean? When we log in, there are signals that come in as part of that login request. Let's, as an example, say I'm using Outlook on my bring your own device iPhone, and I want to check my email first thing in the morning. When I first open Outlook, the very first thing that happens is Outlook will send these signals to our tenant, okay, to Exchange. What's it sending? It's saying, hey, this is Steve's phone, and Steve is in his house, okay, location. So there's user location device. He's using the fully secured, fully supported Outlook, and there's currently nothing going on in my tenant or in his connections that would be considered a real time risk. Now, those signals could also be Steve is logging in from uh, Argentina. And yesterday, by the way, or earlier in the day, he was not in Argentina, logging in from Argentina from a web client using some shady sort of mail piece of software. Those are all the different kinds of signals that come in. And what conditional access does with every time we access it, try to do access, is it looks at these signals and determines should I allow access? If there's something a little off, maybe I should require MFA. Let's ask Steve to use his Face ID on his Apple device to confirm that it's him. Um, Maybe the parameters, all of the signals are off enough that we could even say, we're not going to let you into your inbox necessarily, or if it's a line of business app, maybe it won't let me into that line of business app. If it's really bad enough, we can actually have conditional access force a password reset. Um, and then, depending on what's going on, we can have an extra level of monitoring of that session as it happens. So, again, my first example where I'm logging in from home on a device I'm always using, it's probably going to let me straight through, no extra, uh, nothing extra. Let's say I'm in the Microsoft office in Toronto. Because I don't, I'm only there a couple times a year, it may say, hey, Steve, let's do some MFA and make sure you are who you are. So, this is what conditional access does for us. And when it's all said and done, once I go and verify every access attempt, it will then determine do I have access or give me access to my apps and data. Now, this may sound super complex, but the good news is Microsoft gives us, even with P1, Intra P1, which is included with Business Premium, um, it gives us templates to do a lot of this work. And when we think about that, it's really, you'll find that those templates are aligned around common policies, right? Um, so the recommendations you'll see on this screen, you'll find that all of these recommendations have templates already built for them. The other thing, just so you know, the other thing we get before we go into our demo with the Intra ID Plan 1 is we do have we also have the ability to look at all of our sign-ins, right? So we can have policy templates that allow us to monitor everything that's happening. And Mark can attest that this came in very handy for us a little earlier in the year. So make sure, again, if you're running on business premium or if your customers are running business premium, let's make sure those are turned on. So what I want to do is I'm going to pull up and I'm going to break all the rules of demos and I'm actually going to pull up my tenant. So I'm going to go to purview.microsoft.com. And I know you've probably heard this before, especially if you've heard it from me. Uh, in this world of cloud computing, stuff moves around. so um, I saw something new in Purview in a session I did last Thursday. So if you see me say, where'd that go? Or, oh, wow, that's new. I'll call those out for you. But I want to make sure you just be aware, even your experience, I could have a different version in some of the demos we do if you're following along. But here we are inside of Purview, and you'll see the common solutions across this middle bar. So the data catalog is where we can curate and let our users find data. Information protection, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Talked about insider risk. Today, or right now, we're going to, sorry, I'm in the wrong thing. We need to get an intra. Although I may have been able to get to that with insider risk. But okay, so here we are in intra. Most of you are used to this. Can we take a moment for a moment of silence for our friend Azure Active Directory? Okay, so when we think about identity, right? Identity we manage in intra, and it really is we focus on all the different capabilities that we can bring. So one of the couple places we want to look is ID protection and ID governance, right? And these are the two places where we can see who's accessing in governance, how we're managing our privileged identities. And then under protection, this is what are the capabilities we have turned on. This is where we look for risky activities and we see our identity protection overall and conditional access. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into conditional access. And the very first option, I'll have my dashboard. You'll see we have in our tenant 3 policies enabled at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll zip into policies, and you'll see that we have an admin requires admin MFA. You'll see that we have deny access outside of USA and Colombia. We have a team that works with us inside of Colombia and on one of our software tools, and then we have an end user MFA policy. Let's say though as we're looking at everything, we want to look at some of those recommended other options we had. So let's go ahead and pick up at the top. You'll see we have a new policy from template. And we've already got MFA for admins turned on. I know one of the top things, if you've ever went into Secure Score, it's setting up a policy for blocking legacy authentication. So let's go ahead and let's do that. And I'll just go ahead and show you what this policy looks like. So what we'll see is over here, to see what's in the actually policy, you should choose view, and it'll tell you what the scenarios are for. So this is secure foundation, zero trust, remote work, and protects administrative accounts. Tells us which users are included and what users excluded, which particular apps, all that good stuff. So we have these policies here. But what I actually want to do instead of doing that is I'm going to go ahead and create a new policy from scratch, just so we don't have lots of things filled in. So this case, I'm going to go ahead and say device compliance policy. And once I name my policy, you'll see I then can assign it. So I can include users and exclude users. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and include all users, okay? And then we're going to exclude, in this case, we're going to choose directory roles, and we're going to do global. We're going to exclude global admins, right? Now, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm sure Mark will school me on this a little later of whether this is a good thing to show you or not. But I wanted you to see how we can pick that. One piece of advice I got is never pick users and groups. Never or rarely should you exclude your senior executive team. And for those of you that work with senior executive teams in your clients, you probably know why we wouldn't want to do that. They're usually the targets, right? So once we assign our users, we can look at targeted resources. So we can look at things like cloud apps, the context, or within user actions. We're going to go ahead and leave that at, we'll go ahead and say all resources. Then we can look at network. Now we used to think about location. I talked about location earlier. But now you'll see we have the ability to create trusted networks and locations. Now, we may not typically want to do this for something like email or Teams access. But some of your customers may, military industry I know does that. But think about access to applications, our line of business applications, or an R&D set of tools that we're using. We may say that for this specific application, for a specific application or a specific set of tools, or even a specific set of data, that can only be accessed from a trusted network or location. This gives us the way to turn all that on. I then have, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. I'm not going to make this policy real, but next thing we can do is look at our conditions. And there we talked about user risk, right? So if the user, if the system is determined the user's in a medium or high risk state, maybe we don't let them, we enforce this policy. If they're a low risk state, it's fine. And you'll see we have insider risk, sign-in risk down the middle here. Which device platforms do we want to allow, locations, which apps, etc. So we can specify all of these things. The next component we have is what we want to do. And in this case, we're granting. You'll see over here. A conditional access policy can either grant or it can block. In this case, let's say that if our device compliance policy to get to our apps, that if the policy is triggered, we want to require multi-factor authentication and authentication strength. Here we go. Let me try that. Require authentication strength. So here we can say multi-factor authentication. And you know how sometimes you get MFA, it pops up and it says type in a number. Sometimes it's just, let me see your, are you trying to log in? Yes. This is where we control those settings. We could spend an hour just exploring this, but I want you to see, and I encourage you, if you have an account with Thrites, go ahead and investigate this and come up with those standards. Again, use the templates though, because all these decisions are made for you. And then we can control the actual session. So I'm going to discard those changes, actual session, and determine how we want to apply that per session. Now, Here's one of my recommendations. Anytime you deploy conditional access, you'll see down at the bottom before I press create, I can create it in report only mode. I highly encourage you do this just in case you missed something. And I think you all saw, hey, make sure you're not blocking your admin account with this policy. By turning it to report only, what it will do is it will still monitor everything, and then it will create a report and trigger uh, reports when this policy, or when all your policies get triggered, when this policy in particular gets triggered. And when it does, what we can then do is run that for a week or two. And when that's all done, go back and look and see how would this have affected if we would have turned it on. We look at that, we make sure there's no red flags there, and then we would come back into that policy and turn it on. So I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to see if there's anything in Q&A or meeting chat. It looks good. So we're good there. So that is intra and conditional access. Next area, if we think about where is the edge, right? I said it's identity, and then it's device, right? So one of the beauties of having business premium is we have Intune. And we also have Defender for Business, which is Defender for Endpoint, but for 300 seats or less. And when we think about managing the endpoint, it starts with how we deploy our devices. And I don't know if anyone remembers Ghost, right? But back in the day when we'd create a floppy, or even finally we got to a CD-ROMs, we'd burn CD-ROMs, and then we got to USB sticks. But the days of building custom images and doing a manual touch to the device to deploy devices, we shouldn't be doing that any longer. Um, Microsoft has done a terrific job of creating the new way to do it, and that is taking advantage of things like autopilot, the capabilities inside of inside of Intune, the capabilities in Business for Defender. So it really does give us the capability to have an end user unbox the machine right off the shelf, right off the truck, right off the UPS, uh, open the box, power it on, turn it on, have minimal interaction. Basically, as long as the device has Windows Pro on it, it will ask you, do you want to log in with your work email? Yeah, or your work account. Yes, set me up with my work account. Um, and then it will hopefully trigger MFA because we have all that turned on. This is a device that our tenant has never seen. Trigger MFA, and then once I do that, go ahead and make the device ready to go. I just got a new device, a new Surface Pro, and literally based on how Mark has got everything configured, that's exactly what I did. That's all I did to get my machine set up. As soon as I connected it to the network, logged in with my ID, it said, "Okay, we're going to set a few things up with my work ID. We're going to set a few things up." My PowerPoint or all my Microsoft tools was there. Copilot was there. My OneDrive was set up and ready to go. All the documents I were working on were in my recent documents in each app. Uh, an unbelievably hands-off experience in doing that. Now, when we think about life cycle, what other feature does that bring to the table, right? In the world of organizations, and I see this a lot in education in the education accounts that I work with and partners I work with, in that, both faculty and students are always breaking devices. So with this autopilot and Intune and with everything configured correctly, all we have to do is in the office have in the supply closet a couple extra devices. So let's say a teacher comes in and says, "I spilled my coffee." The machine won't turn on. Literally, all we have to do is hand that teacher their device or a teacher device, go back, have them log in. It can be pre-configured to the network and everything based on the autopilot capabilities. Come on, say log in as the teacher, and again, within 10-15 minutes, they'll be back up and running and able to use that device in their classroom. So, how's autopilot work? In reality, it starts with registering the devices. Um, Most manufacturers now, device manufacturers, have the capability to provide. Mike, I'm going to ask you if you could come off mute for a minute.
Yes, sir.
Are you guys autopilot enabled on any devices you sell?
We don't do hardware,
Oh, you
so
don't know. I'm sorry
yeah,
about that. For some
yeah,
reason, I
no
thought you
worries.
did. Well, if they did, they would be able. So let's say you order some Dell devices or some Lenovo devices, and thank you for reminding me. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm a little
No
embarrassed.
problem. We're a cloud marketplace, and
Yeah, got it.
happy to happy to be there.
So the beauty of it is when you order your devices from, let's say you're buying them directly from Dell, you can now request the autopilot code, the autopilot registration, the GUID. It's a long, ugly number. And what that will do is you can get all the way down to the point where you actually assign each specific device to a specific user. That's called registering the devices. Or you can just say, this device is okay on our network. We then assign the correct profiles we want for those devices. Again, in education, think about it. We have administrators, we have faculty, and we have students. We could have three different profiles and then just have those devices drop shipped directly to the end users. Now, part of this magic is making sure we're setting up all of the correct security policies. And as we think about the edge, we've talked about identity. Now we have to look at how do we protect the endpoint. So it's no longer just that antivirus software, right? If you think back in the day, if we had McAfee or Symantec or Microsoft's Defender that's built in, if we had antivirus, we considered that device to be secure. But now we think about what happens if someone loses the device. We have to make sure the disk is encrypted. We want to make sure now that the endpoint can be used in that laptop can be used anywhere. We want to make sure the firewall is correctly configured because that endpoint's there. And then again, because we have Defender for Business in the business premium license or in E5 security, you can get the uh, Defender for Endpoint. We now have the ability to have EDR or endpoint detection and response and attack surface reduction capabilities automatically deployed as we're deploying that device through autopilot. And it really does sets the stage when we think about getting ready for AI. That sets up that endpoint security for this conversation. Now, there are a lot of settings that goes uh, that that go into this, right? So one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, and I'm going to do a demo here in a minute, is I'm going to encourage, no matter what you and your technical team have thought about wizards in the past, I'm going to strongly encourage that we use the wizards that are created for Microsoft 365 and Microsoft 365 Copilot to configure our tenant and our endpoint protection for this. And I'm going to go show you where that is here in a minute. If we do that, what it lets us do is it sets us up to protect our users from that end-to-end attack story. So let's say a user gets that email and the email makes it through. It's a zero-day attack. And they click that link. You know users that have clicked that link, right? And that link pops a little access pop up and says, "Hey, to watch this video, you need to have elevated privileges." And of course, the user just wants to watch the video, right? So they, of course, click that. Yeah, go ahead, show me the video, and that just let the bad guy into their machine. Once we configure everything correctly, we have the ability to see that incident as it's happening and manage it from end to end. And what does that gives us? That gives us the capabilities to have real-time management, not only of our users, but of what they do on those endpoints. And this is the same advanced capabilities that we have as part of the enterprise suite of tools. Same protection from a vulnerability and a EDR perspective. And when it's all said and done, this helps us from the easiest things, right? It's very easy to make sure that to monitor application vulnerabilities. This gives the example of Grammarly, all the way down to weird things in firmware on a particular device that are exposed. Um, so the full gamut is protected. And what amazes me is that $22 US price, right? Which I think 28.40 or something like that for our Canadian friends. Um, it gives us this enterprise level of protection. I love that. So what I want to do is let's actually go in, and we do not have time to go through all of those capabilities. But what I do want to show you is where we find that wizard that shows us all the things we have to set up. So I'm going to go, and again, I'm breaking all the rules, and Mark's mad at me. I'm going to go into the admin center in my tenant. And if I come down to, if I do a show all, you'll see that I have settings and I have setup. Now, if I go to setup, this is going to be where I make sure I do all my things, like making sure that I have all the different capabilities. And this is a nice little place where you can use as a checklist. And I can see Mark's been doing a lot of work, right? As our security lead. So I look at this and it looks like, okay, there's quite a few things, and you'll see that everything we've talked about from a security perspective. But the real question is, how do we make this is a great checklist, but how do I find a comprehensive list of everything we need to turn on? And for that, there's a couple different ways to find it. The way we used to have to find it was to go to the advanced deployment guides, and you'll see setup for Microsoft 365 Copilot. What I want to actually do is show you this new capability. Um, if they have Copilot in their tenant, you'll now see this Copilot option on the left side of the screen. I'm going to drop that down, and if I go to settings for Copilot, you'll see I have a full list of all of the different places that I need to do these settings. Now, here's what I want to show you though, is if you look here, you're going to see that these settings are actually managed in different places, right? So we talk about Copilot for security in here. We talk about things that apply to M365 Copilot or Copilot Chat. Now, if I go to my overview, you'll see I also have um, all of the, if I go to, for example, Discover, I can see all of our tools for readiness and preparation. If I see health, I have all of my health of what's going on. Here's the devices from a Copilot control perspective. Now, if you haven't heard of the Copilot control system, it's brand new. It was announced earlier this year, and it is a place where we can keep track of Copilot changes as well as see, and you'll see we have some work to do to get some devices up to date. What I want to actually do is we're going to go back to setup and go back to advanced deployment, and you'll see that we have set up Microsoft 365 Copilot. And this is a wizard. And what I want you to do is I want you to use this, or I want you to consider, I'm not telling you what to do, but what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to consider using this as your uh, sort of center when you're bringing on new customers into Copilot. Now, what you'll see here is we have the readiness assessment. And if you're not familiar with that, I think we talked about that on one of our earlier training events. That's an Excel spreadsheet um, that we have access, a spreadsheet that we have access to has 28 questions. We work with our customer to get them answered, and that will tell us what areas we need to focus on. Um, but what I want to do is come over here to advanced configuration. You'll see this is for updating with advanced security protections and controls. So if we get started here, you'll see that here is a list of all the things that we need to do, different areas. Do we want to look, let's say we're just going to look at data protection. So I'm going to go ahead and check that. If your customers have access to Fast Track, this is where you can request assistance. They can request assistance from Fast Track. Don't know how many of you have customers that have their own IT departments that use Fast Track or not. But if you haven't used Fast Track, I encourage you to at least explore that. But when we go into next, you'll see here is all of the settings. Here's how we handle data. And if I go into any specific one, it tells me what I need to do. It gives me a link to where I find those settings and allows me to manage. And in this case, you'll see here are the details. In SharePoint, I need to create and apply sensitivity labels. We'll talk about those in a minute. I want to control access to sites and block downloads. You'll see I have this list. But notice I also have the changes I need to make in Purview. And here we're going to see the very first one. Let's turn on DLP. Low hanging fruit here, folks. What I'll show you a little later is create those DLP policies, create your sensitivity labels, make sure we follow all this, make sure here's instructions on doing all of the audit work that we need to make sure is turned on, but it's a step-by-step list. Now, I've had partners say, well, Steve, this is neat, but I have a document set. We have a standard process that we go through, and it's documented in our own tools and our management tools. And so for them, what I say is what you need to do is have someone on your team regularly checking in and making sure that whatever is in here is also in your policy guide or in your step-by-step guide. Because one of the reasons I recommend we really focus on using the wizard is I should not be looking at the chat, but the whole Chrome Edge thing drives me. Okay. Anyway, there are changes. Any new features that are turned on, any new security recommendations or capabilities, this I think is the easiest place to find those changes. and make sure we know. So if you don't have a set of tools, use this as your guide. And again, as we go step by step and do them, it allows us to check them off. Highly encourage you use the wizard in the admin center. So I'm going to take a drink and get caught up. I see a question in the Q&A. Has anyone looked at that yet? We'll see real quick. Okay, so Andrew asked for conditional access policies. Does every user have to have the M365 Business Premium or higher license to use it? What if only some users have M365 higher? Okay, Andrew, I love you. And Mark will go out and find the link for you to, or maybe Mike, I don't know. Someone will go find the link for you that will talk about that. The best answers for how do I anything with licensing right now is typically learn. Uh, Now, what I'll say about that is sometimes the documentation in learn is clear as mud. So the good news is your team at Sherweb has access to resources to get to dig into those complex licensing questions. Um, I traditionally try not to answer licensing questions because there's always nuances. So um, I will leave Mark to help get that answer if he hasn't already. Maybe Mark will be working on that now. So um, because it's will it work? There are many. Let me say it this way: there are many capabilities that if you apply a single license that has the defender capabilities or the conditional access capabilities, when you configure it, it typically applies to all users. Um, is that the correct? Does that mean that you can use it license wise? Again, that's its own quagmire there. So, but we'll find you a link for sure and share on that. So, okay. Or here's another thing I would recommend, Mike, is or Andrew, anyone else that's curious about that is throw that question in Copilot. Even if you don't have the $30 license, as long as you have your Microsoft 365 tenant, go to Microsoft365.com and log in with your account, choose chat. That takes you into the free secure chat and ask there. So, okay, next thing we want to talk about is audits and making sure we're taking advantage from a compliance perspective. And when we think about this, it's really about how do we think about managing our private information? How do we think about how we deal with our customers' data? And when I'm saying think about, it's not just sharing as a file, it's how we communicate in an email, how we communicate in a Teams chat, things said even in a Teams meeting. We need to look at all the different ways that when we bring Copilot in the environment, it can help us. But we need to also make sure that all of where we have everything configured in a way that lets Copilot and the end user do this in a very secure, compliant way. So the big three, right, that we talk about when we're talking about data protection, it really starts with overexposure and oversharing of data, right? And many times, I always like to say it has nothing to do with end users coming to work wanting to do malicious things. Most end users come to work wanting to do great things, right? They want to come do their job. They're not coming to be malicious. But sometimes users accidentally make mistakes. So with Purview, we have the capability to put controls in place that not only control how we communicate, but also help us find violations or based on regulatory pressures that are continuing to come. We want to make sure we have the ability, if there's ever a question, to go back and find out how our users used AI, how they accessed our data, how we think about that. The third one is trying to prevent data leakage and this information leakage. This is not new. This is something we've been battling forever. And the good news is with Business Premium, we have the capabilities to do that. So when we think about Purview, what's the ways we do that? So when we think about tools like DLP or data loss prevention and information protection, think sensitivity labels, that typically lives in the world of Office 365 apps, right? We're typically thinking about Word documents, emails, team chats, Excel files, and PowerPoints. But we also have a lot of other data out there, that unstructured and even structured data. And there with Purview, and I pointed to it earlier, we have data governance where we can control what's in our data, where our data lives, and gives us details on that data. And then when it comes across both Azure and M365, it becomes about using tools, being able to do audits, using tools like Compliance Manager to understand where we are today, where our risks, where our exposures are, and how we prevent them, and also how we deal with them if something happens. So what we want to make sure is, and we've been talking DLP and information sensitivity labels, I mean, back to 2017, 2018, I remember we were on the road regularly introducing many organizations moving to M365 uh, on the security capabilities, information protection capabilities. And so what Microsoft has done a tremendous job of is it's now all of these things, DLP, information protection, is all now integrated into the apps and the experience that users are used to seeing. For example, if we look at this, the Excel at the bottom of this page, we'll see that our employee roster is what we're looking at, right? What would be on an employee roster? It's highly likely that maybe there's our social security number or national our identification number could be in our employee roster. And you'll see this policy tip, and it says this file conflicts with a policy in your organization. If you don't resolve the conflict, we might block the file. You can go to the file menu for more information, and then you'll see an override button. One of the big issues we run into regularly with partners that are just learning how to configure DLP for the first time is that it's pretty easy to make it too restrictive. So, for example, in our environment, we turned on DLP, and we have a vendor we work with for our sustainability and the green work we're doing. Um, and every invoice they send us has their bank routing and checking account information on it, which triggers every email that comes in from them. And it also, if we try to reply to that, it also blocked us from sending reply. So you'll see there's the override button here. We can also, when we actually go look at DLP, I'll show you there are ways we can say, hey, if it's one number and it has to do with financial information, maybe that's fine. In healthcare, maybe that wouldn't be fine, right? And we can define those policies. That's not why they're on by default. And this capability works across phones, tablets, Windows, Mac, and the cloud. So when we configure these capabilities, um, we have that we have these controls. The other thing you'll see in this example on the screen is I'm trying to send this or I might be trying to share a team site up here. And you'll see right here, if we're adding specific people and we added Alex, it's going to tell us, hey, this item contains, the site contains sensitive information, and you're trying to share it with someone outside your organization. So we have these controls that if we configure them correctly up front, protects our end users. When we think about audit, there's three different types of forensic investigation events that we can work on. The first is we can look at Copilot interactions. Everything done in Copilot is auditable, e-discoverable, and litigation holdable if we have Business Premium E3 and E5 with those capabilities licensed and turned on, right? So what does that mean? Both the free secure chat now and the 365, the full 365 Copilot license, every interaction, every prompt, and every response is content in the graph, just like a Word document, just like a chat message in Teams, just like an email. So that means all the same tools we can use to audit, e-discover, and litigation hold, any other content, we can actually do with somebody's mic. Someone could see whose microphone's turned on. Oh, maybe that's Mike. Thank you, Mike. Um, so the beauty of Copilot and why I now recommend Copilot Chat for everyone for their work AI tool is it's free, but it's also secure. And when I'm doing work, the company or the organization I work for is the responsible party for the work I do. So it makes sense that the work I do should be auditable, e-discoverable, which with third-party tools we don't have. We also have insights into Teams interactions that can be the users' channels, connectors, any apps that have been connected or removed. We can look at all those events, and we can also see what goes on through Exchange Online, through Exchange and SharePoint, to do everything from just basic audits all the way out to breach assessments. So forensic investigations, like I said, with Business Preview, with Premium, and the P1 version of Purview, it gives us the ability to meet any regulatory and legal obligations by providing that assess the scope of a data breach, as well as provide access to the audit logs for all those details. Now, one of the capabilities as we think about protecting our data estate, right, that data catalog, one of the great features that Microsoft has added since the launch of M365 Copilot is a capability called restricted SharePoint search. And this doesn't apply to the chat, to Copilot Chat, that free secure Copilot Chat, but to the full 365 Copilot license. It actually allows us, before we've done all the heavy lifting of looking at every SharePoint site and everything connected to the graph and making sure everything's secure, all of our data is labeled, all that good stuff. We have the capability to turn on a feature called restricted SharePoint search. Um, it's a little PowerShell script you run, and what it does is it makes it so the both the end user you or the end user and Copilot, when the end user is using it, can only see a very specific set of content. And the way I like to think about it is restricted SharePoint search enables users to use Copilot with the things they use every day. So email, Teams files shared in Teams, files in SharePoints that I regularly access, frequently access, any files that were directly shared with me, any files that I've recently viewed or edited or created, no matter where they are. Restricted SharePoint search lets me see all of that. What it does is it blocks all the random, those old SharePoint sites. We know customers still have that old SharePoint site that is everything that was on the S drive back in the day. So, we don't know what's on there. Son number two took on the job of moving their current S drive. He works for the Georgia state government, moving everything on their local S drive to a SharePoint site. And that's not he's not in IT, but there's no one in his department that could do it. So he's taken on the responsibility. And the first thing he came home and says, Dad, I was out on the S drive and I found a folder called passwords.xls. Is that normal? And I said, that's very normal for those crazy things called the old S drives. Our users put everything out there. So anyway, restricted SharePoint search. Now, if I do have SharePoint sites that I know are secure, that the data is all clean, labeled, protected, I can create up to a list of 100 of those curated, whitelisted SharePoint sites with this. But this is a great capability to turn on and get all those things, get our users using AI securely before we've had a chance to validate all of the data that's out there. I'm going to pause here for a minute and look at Q&A. It looks like we've got some questions. We're getting some questions answered. Okay. Yeah, so we got the P1 answered. So that's good. Our data residency tools, or the ability to choose where this Copilot and other tenants' data resides, included in Business Premium. Yeah, that's something that Microsoft has provided since day one. If you have customers, for example, in the EU that has very strong requirements about the data has to be within, for example, the country that you're in, or in a region you're in. Absolutely, those capabilities carry forward. It's not just Business Premium, but Copilot is built from the ground up to only utilize or to take advantage of data residency. That was built in from the scratch, Adrian. So great question there. And let me see what else we got. Okay. So when we think about how do we search, how do we find our data, um, especially when we're thinking about how do we make sure that our data is secure, we can start with e-discovery. Right? And here's an example of e-discovery that you'll see in the middle here. Our e-discovery case is called Contoso Case Final _ 2, and it's the final collection for early assessment. We can see that the date. We can also see that we've had e-discovery for quite a while. Um, It was created by the company admin, and it's looking for anything that says lawsuit or legal between two dates. And it goes out, and you can see all the items. So we have this case capability to start these e-discoveries, and then you'll see the results here on the bottom. Now, what does this actually do? Before we introduce Copilot, this actually looks at everything, all content, all content in the graph. So every email, every Teams chat, every document, every file shared. When we bring in Copilot, we now have another layer of another place to go look. And like I said earlier, it's those prompts and those responses we get back that are now also fully part and managed inside of Purview. Okay. Next thing is DLP, one of my favorites. This is something I recommend every customer that has DLP, and whether they're business premium, E3, and E5, I highly encourage we configure DLP. And what does DLP do? Well, remember we talked about our user, right, and the identity, and then we talked about endpoint. Well, it brings that same risk capabilities that we talked about with conditional access and with endpoint protection, and it brings us to access to data. So it's context aware, it uses machine learning analysis, and basically what can happen is, depending on how I'm coming in to access let's say, a particularly sensitive piece of data. Let's say in my example, I'm a publicly traded company, I'm getting ready for reporting, I'm part of the team writing the report. And let's say I get in a situation where someone is forcing me under duress to get information. Um, so let's say because I'm on a machine that they don't recognize, I'm coming in from a location that's not recognized. And let's say if that situation happened, maybe I typed in my password wrong the first few times. Um, Whatever triggers high risk, it will affect, do I have access to that data? So for example, if I'm coming in from my laptop in my office, where I log in every day, and I have data I'm accessing that has sensitive information in it, it may just give me that policy tip like I showed you in that Excel file, that yellow bar that comes up and says, hey, be careful, this thing has some sensitive data. If I'm at a moderate risk level, Steve's coming in from a machine I'm not familiar with, but he's in the United States. It's possible he could have traveled there. Maybe we go ahead and allow access to that data, but we're going to block by default, but we'll give them the override. Or again, if I'm in an elevated risky user state, then our DLP policy will actually block and not allow that access to that data. And the way DLP works is it starts with what we refer to as the DLP program. And what that means is the first thing we have to do is we go to our stakeholders, we go to our customer leaders and say, what sensitive information types do you handle? Now, most organizations have HR, so we can assume that they're handling PII and they're handling financial information from payroll, right? But other organizations may be handling customer data. Healthcare, of course, may have healthcare data on their users. So what we do is we determine from our stakeholders what are the types of sensitive information they have. Then we go create the policy. We turn on discovery, and I'll show you where that happens next. And then we'll report out what we're seeing. Now, just like with conditional access, we're going to actually go ahead and turn on DLP, or we're going to actually enable DLP, a DLP policy, but we're not going to actually enforce it yet. We're going to put it in report only mode. So let me show you that. Okay, so back to where I started. Let's go to where's my purview? I had purview open somewhere, didn't I? Oh, well, we'll open it again. So purview. And again, purview is anything compliance. Purview is uh, anything data centric. So going to my middle bar, and we're going to go ahead and click into data loss prevention. And not unlike most of the security tools, um, you'll see typically we have policies over here on the left. Um, we'll just see the case of the state. It looks like right now we had 14 different activities that were detected, Exchange, some OneDrive, and some SharePoint. I could investigate those here if I wanted to. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on policies. And you'll see in our tenant, we have US financial data. Let's say we decided we're going to start working with a group in Canada out of Toronto. So let's go ahead and create a policy. And I'm going to go ahead and say, this is my CA resident. Oops, sorry. Um, Well, let's just do it this way. Let me clear that. Let me clear this out. Let me X that out. I'm going to start with. I'm going to pick Canada, and what we'll find is we have financial. So we have Canada financial data, and then we have PCI DSS. You'll see we have our HIA, our personal HIA, and then the Ontario specific. So privacy, and that's we're going to be working with folks. We want to make sure we're protecting their any sensitive information. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose the PII data for Canada. And here you'll see it's going to look for driver's license, bank account, passport, social insurance, health services, and my personal health identification number. Now, could I go out and manually add these one at a time in a custom policy? Yeah, I typically encourage, you'll see I have custom policies here in this center column. I typically recommend you start with one of the templates. So I'm going to name this, and it goes ahead and names it for me, gives me a brief description. I could edit that if I need to. And I'm going to go ahead and click next, and it's going to take it a minute. And I always get impatient here. The next thing it's going to ask us about is admin units, right? And this is who we would apply admin units. Now you'll see a note here that admin units are not supported for some geographic locations, and they do require the E5 license. So this doesn't apply to the business premium users unless we've added the E5 security. So we're going to go ahead and leave this alone. And then it's going to ask us, where do we want this policy applied? Do we want to protect emails coming in and going out uh, with that data? Yeah, we absolutely do. So here you can see we have Exchange, we have data stored in SharePoint sites, we have data stored in OneDrive, Teams, etc. Now, relatively new, you'll see we also have the ability, if we're appropriately licensed for it, to also protect Fabric and Power BI workspaces as well. So These are all the places that DLP is going to apply. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the defaults there, and I can review. These are all the things I care about. You notice I could create a custom if I wanted to do that, but I do not want to do that. I'm then going to go, last but not least, it's going to say, here's the information we're going to protect. That's great. What are the actions we're going to take? And here you'll see actions like, when this content matches this policy, show that policy tip, that little yellow bar we saw in that Excel example. Now I could also customize those if I want to. We can also trigger an email that says, hey, this policy's been triggered. You'll see we talk about specific amounts. Sometimes, like I said, some people in their industry, and when we talk to their shareholders, they may say, yes, our accounts receivable department regularly handles credit card details. Well, maybe it's okay for for a policy for credit card information, bank account information. Maybe we say 2 or more instances, right? Or 5 or more instances. And what that means is the policy won't trigger like the example I gave you earlier, where our customer or our vendor has their payment information on their invoice. This wouldn't trigger if we had that policy set. But if there were 2 pieces of information or 5 pieces of information based on the number I put in here, we will handle that. We also talk about we can control what happens when it's triggered. It sends an email, and how it sends an alert. We can also restrict access to specific Microsoft 365 licenses that are encrypted, or locations that are encrypted. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to customize, do we allow override? And we can be granular to that. So we can say, yes, executives or leadership team can override or give permission to override. Again, if you look at all the choices we have here, and yes, we can control what's going on in Box and G Suite and WebEx and Dropbox and Salesforce. Lots of capabilities here. Can't go into all these, but we do have a lot of granular capabilities there. Last but not least, what I want to show you is policy mode. And here we're going to see this ability to row the policy in simulation mode. And run the policy in simulation mode. And this is like that report only we saw earlier in conditional access. This will give us the capabilities to see over a 2-week, 3-week period how often the policy we just created gets triggered. So I always encourage you to turn this on. Now, there are 2 new options that I haven't seen that weren't here back in the day. I can go ahead and show the policy tips that starts warning people, hey, there's sensitive data. It's not going to say I'm blocking it, but it's going to say warning. That gets people used to seeing that. And then I can automatically turn the policy off, turn the policy on if it's not triggered within 15 days. So this is a feature that partners used to turn these on, and then they forgot to come back or turned them on in simulation mode or report only mode and forgot to come back. So now we can turn on a policy that says, if this policy is not triggered within 15 days, go ahead and turn it on. Or edited within 15 days, let's turn it on. So when we're done, we would go ahead and submit that. I'm not going to submit that, but I'm not going to submit it at this time because I don't need to create something for Mark to go clean up. But we'll go ahead and switch back over. Let's check questions real quick. It looks like we're getting things. See, Mark's adding content. So let's see. We'll go ahead and is Purview able to read content on non-OCR PDF files? There's been asks. I've seen that come through feedback from users on Microsoft, into Microsoft. I would have to look. I don't think that capability is turned on today. Um, Definitely in OCRable or in searchable PDFs that would work. But if it's just the PDF with an image, I don't think that's the case. But we would need to dig into that. Okay, look, quick time check. I need to power through because I do want to leave some time for some open mic Q&A. Sensitivity labels. How do I think about sensitivity labels? Well, the way I think about sensitivity labels are with DLP, it can look for things like, does this file have sensitive information in it? Now, what that doesn't do is when that file's in motion, DLP will see it come into the inbox and trigger it. But if the file is just sitting on a share somewhere, until it's accessed, DLP may not trigger. And sometimes we have, I'm going to go back to our scary S drive, or that folder that's called HR team that was supposed to be just the notices for the team, and then all of a sudden internal team on what's going on inside the department, and all of a sudden we're starting to get some shared files in there. When we think about our file shares, hopefully we have confidential information file shares, and then we have public file shares. And what we want to make sure, especially when we're thinking about using AI, is that the user and Copilot handle those correctly, right? So we, with even with Business Basic and Business Standard, we have the ability to restrict confidential information being shared, and but let public information be shared and used by Copilot as part of its answer. Now, a little bit different story, and I'm going to build this one out. What happens if that same confidential and general data is in the same file share? And with sensitivity labels, we have the ability to label the documents that have protections like encryption. And think of, when I say labels, think confidential, highly confidential, classified, public, those types of labels. If I have something that's labeled confidential or highly confidential, I may want Copilot to actually be able to see those because I may be doing something internally where I need to ask data or Copilot to analyze data that's in confidential files. But because they're labeled as confidential, Copilot knows that, because that's labeled as confidential, there's extra sets of uh, rigor Copilot has to use. And where that actually happens is as we send a prompt and the response comes back, the very last thing that happens uh, before the response lands in the box is there's a purview check, and that purview check checks all of this to make sure that we're not providing information in the context that the user's asking it. So typically I do a demo here, but we don't have time. So I'm going to wrap with here because I do want to make sure we have time to go over all the questions, make sure we get them answered. Um, Microsoft has provided us something called the Managed Services Security Services Kit. Boy. And so what I want to do is I would like to, I'm going to go ahead and throw this link in the chat. So give me a second to do that. Okay. Here it is. Let me get to that slide. I'm going to grab the link. I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to come back to the chat. I'm going to paste it in the chat. So what this is, and I would like you to go ahead once you get it in the chat. This is stored on Transform. If you've not been on Transform, um, it may ask you to log in, use your partner credentials, uh, and it will ask you two questions. Both of the answers should be partner to those two questions. If you get an access issue, um, uh, let us know, and maybe Mark can find the magic link that will have access issues. So just throw in the chat if you have access issues, and we'll try to find. There's a special URL you can use to typically fix those. So I'm going to go ahead and download the Microsoft the Managed Partner Security. Yes, the security kit. And what that does is this brings us to the modern work solution plays. And those solution plays, you'll see there's two of them. There's Copilot and there's Secure Productivity. I want to point out a few of the things that are here that you can use that are great tools to help secure your customers' environments. So if we look at the assets here, there's a couple things that I recommend. The first two are all about the business suite and business premium sales tools. Great thing to look at if you haven't. The next three, you'll see the Secure Productivity and M365 Business Standard Customer Pitch Deck. Um, this is going to be the basic security capabilities. Go over the basic security capabilities that are built into M365 Business Standard and Premium. And again, there's still audits in there, MFAs in there, and talks about those. But the next two are the business decision maker and the IT decision maker decks that you would use to tell the story of why business premium is important. And it will cover a lot of the content we just looked at uh, uh, without the demos. So I encourage you to pull all of these down and take advantage of this set of resources. For your go-to-market team, we also have the go-to-market playbook. So I want to encourage you to look at that. Under build managed services, you're going to see the partner kit that we talked about, right? And as a reminder, we're clicking the link in the chat. We're scrolling down and we're picking where it says solution plays, we're picking build managed services. And the very first thing you'll see is it talks about Lighthouse. We've talked about Lighthouse before with this group, I believe. If you haven't started using Lighthouse, you better. Lots of great value there. But under the services partner kit, you'll see we can download that. I'm going to go ahead and download that kit and we'll show you what it looks like. And it looks like it has been updated because I don't have it. So in this kit, there are 4 documents four PDFs that will walk us through the process of building a Microsoft security practice. So it starts with the utilizing PDF. The next one may be rudimentary for a lot of this, but the document number 1 is about becoming a CSP and making sure, probably good to go through and check and make sure you're taking advantage of all the things you can in the CSP program, but we probably don't need that. The next one is enhancing security with M365 Business. This is a hands-on guide. And then there's the checklist. So I'm going to go ahead and open the checklist and show you what that looks like. So here you'll see we're talking about business premium. And here's all the things we want to think about. Do you have a cybersecurity framework? We personally have adopted CIS. We're friends with the Center for Internet Security, and so we use CIS security critical security controls V8. But you'll see under each section, have you applied the privileges, the principles of least privilege? Have you configured MFA for admins? So it gives us a step-by-step checklist of all the things we need to turn on, all the way down to data protection, information protection, all that good stuff. So that's just give you an idea of some of the things that are in the toolkit. There's one other thing I did want to show. Sometimes partners don't dig into the second folder there. And one of the tools that's available is a simple cybersecurity assessment tool for CIS V8. I do encourage you to take a look at that. And here we'll see, here are the standards for CIS, and allows us to go in and look at each one. It'll tell us how we apply it with Microsoft 365. So it's just overall a great set of resources and tools to utilize. Who do I reach out to if I cannot access the link? Mark, if you haven't found it yet, for Richard, there is a aka.ms link that will should get you unblocked. So he'll share that. And if he can't find it when we're done, I'll go ahead and I'll go hunt for it. Okay, back to the content. Okay, so like I said, we've chosen CIS. Microsoft loves CIS. They've got a great relationship. And it gives us basically all of in the Microsoft 365 stack, what can I turn on in premium and how does that align to what we're turning on today? So why do I want to, when it's all said and done, what do we want to make sure we're doing here? Some of you may be world-class MSSPs, right? Just top security solution providers, providing managed security solutions. That's great. All the things we've shared here, what I would encourage you to do is have your teams take a look at the content we provided and see if there's anything in there, like the wizard. See if there's anything that Microsoft's currently recommending that you're not doing or not managing today. Same with the service kit. Same with that CIS control spreadsheet. Let's go ahead and take a look at all those and make sure we are make sure that what we're doing. If you don't have a strong security practice or you would like to build a stronger security practice around Microsoft 365, particularly Business Premium, hopefully I've showed you some of my favorite things and given you the sets of resources and tools we need. So I think what we want to do next is go ahead and go to Q&A. And if we could go ahead and, Anne Marie, do you want to open up the mic? Oh, did you? No, let's go ahead and open up the mics. So if anyone has any questions they could ask. And I'll check.
If anyone has a question, can raise their hand and
Oh,
I'll
raise their hand
unmute
and she'll
them.
bring you off.
Yep.
That'd be perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so Mark, if anyone was having access control, Mark put the aka.ms/cdx user consent. Mark, if you would put a note there that needs to be ran in an in-private browser, that would be good. And you run it one time and it should fix your access issue. If you don't, if it doesn't fix it, then you need to open a support ticket with Microsoft to further access that. Okay, do we have anybody raising their hands? Any questions? Okay, well, Mike, do you want to wrap us up then?
Steve, appreciate you coming on to show us all the functionality that's included within Business Premium. This is really important stuff for any of the partners that want to learn more. Please reach out to your account managers and they will bring in the appropriate resources, myself or one of my colleagues, to talk through your specific use case, what you're trying to accomplish. And with that, I appreciate the time, Steve, and thank everyone else here for attending.
Absolutely. Great questions asked. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.